Welcome to the Gals Guide podcast. Join us on an adventure to get to know famous and infamous women from around the world. Each of our presenters has a pick. Is she ancient history? Is she breaking news? Is she safe for work? Well, that's up to each presenter. All we know is that...
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Welcome back. I am Leah, and I am joined by Katie, Bonnie, and Josh, and we are sharing our African gal pick. So Bonnie already talked about Huda Sharari, and Josh already talked about Professor Knox. But before we dive back in, I want to get to know something random about our gal pals. I want to know, would you prefer to visit the jungles, the desert, the savannas, or the cities of Africa? All to explore. It's a big place. Mm-hmm. Dun, dun, dun.
I would probably say, I think it's the savannas. I want to see those big, crazy trees.
Oh, yes. Yeah. There you go. The babao trees.
Yeah, like, all of them. They have all kinds of...
And all the animals,
trees.
Too.
Well, kind of like Australia.
Right.
Some of them may eat me.
This is very true. Yeah.
You know.
So for the trees, then... I like it. There you go. I dig it. What do you two think?
I'd have to go with deserts.
Okay, the desserts. Sorry,
yes,
I spell things wrong. So the deserts, yes,
and specifically like the ones in western South Africa and kind of southern Namibia.
Okay,
because that's where a lot of cool cactuses. And stuff
I was like going, why
grow.
there specifically cactuses? Got it. Okay, trees, cactuses. You two have
Amazingly
met, right?
cool
Okay,
plants.
all right. Okay,
Yeah, a lot of cool plants.
Cool plants. But are they cactuses that only grow then in that desert?
Yeah, there's a lot of endemic plants in that area. Yeah.
Gotcha. This isn't the desert rose that Sting talks about, is it?
I forget what the desert roses are.
Okay, because you're a big Sting fan.
I should know that.
I feel like
and I could probably tell you that.
I do feel like you probably intercepted in your being, but yeah, no, I'll give you some time to figure out that Sting knowledge there.
But also, the
yes.
welwitchias grow there
Cool.
in that area, which they are plants that live for like thousands of years, and there's just
nice.
2 leaves that come off them, and then they get these weird primitive cone-looking things on them. And just the sheer just the lineage of those particular plants is really cool because they think they originally were adapted to like a more tropical environment before
it's a desert.
That became a desert, and then they just learned to adapt to the desert. And
neat.
so they're very, very crazy little guys.
I like it. I'll give you time to look up some Sting knowledge. Katie, what about you?
If I were a brave person, I would say the jungles.
Yeah.
Because that would be amazing. But I'm a coward. So I'd go with savannas so I can see what's coming. And for all of the different kinds of animals you could see hanging out in the savannas.
This is
so
very
I think
true.
I know Africa's giant, but I think if I took the time to get there, I'd have to see a little bit of this and a little bit of this.
Exactly.
If possible.
Yeah. That's why it's like, oh man, what if you could only pick one of these amazing things? Like, how do you choose with all of the amazingness?
Question.
It is.
What would you pick?
I love the savannas. I mean, first of all, I lived in Savannah, Georgia, and all I could think of is I know this is named after a much more epic place. I just think of the African savannas. It's whenever we go to a zoo, it is usually my favorite part because it's the elephants and the giraffes and it's the lions and the cheetah, and it's just like I love all of the savanna animals that are out there. It's one of those things where that's where I'd really want to like spend some time if I could only go to one particular area.
You're going to say jungle though, because you don't do well with the sun.
No, I don't do well with the sun.
You have to find a little tree in the
fully covered with like SPF 3000.
I guess you wouldn't be in the desert. You could probably find something.
You'd have to have one of those sun umbrellas.
Oh, it would be bad, but I would just basically be like, I'm gonna be hurting, but it's worth it. Like, there's no way I'd come out of it without being a fried lobster, basically.
Okay.
But it would be great.
I
would find a way to be sunburnt in the jungle too. If I'm outside, I got sunburnt in a car. Because the sunroof wasn't tinted, and I got burnt through the sunroof on my shoulder.
Yeah.
I am very cursed.
Mm-hmm.
Did you
Just have
figure
fair
out?
skin.
I do. I'm just
Yeah.
pasty. I'm albino with a hint of pink.
They grow in the Arabian Peninsula and the deserts of Africa.
Oh, look at
Oh.
that.
Wide distribution.
Okay, the desert roses.
Yeah.
That
And I
Sting
have
sings
that.
about.
I
That's
have
hot.
that in my plants.
It's not.
In my plant spreadsheet.
Oh, your plant spreadsheet.
Ooh.
Have you met Bonnie?
Because I need to know where the plants that I'm
Ooh.
growing
You
come
have a
from.
spreadsheet too, don't you?
It doesn't get that. It's just like, when to start them in my own little garden.
Oh.
I
Yeah,
haven't
this-
gotten into that.
This is for the house plants, so I know where they've come from, so that I can try to somewhat mimic the environment that they're used
Look at
to.
you.
But it's kind of hard to do in a house,
Full
which
nerding out.
kind of hard to do in your house, which is generally dry in the winter and
Yeah,
moistish in the summer. So,
this is true. In Indiana, it's always unpredictable as well.
Yeah.
So, ew.
but my desert roses spend
Huh.
most of their time out in the Great Desert of Noblesville,
Do they now? It's amazing. I wonder if there's a pin somewhere on
where
Google.
you could stop by and watch them bloom in the summertime.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, those
Did
couple of
the,
days. I believe it's like 3 days.
No,
A day?
those ones were blooming for a while.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I remember
no,
there was one that was a day, and it was everybody come look at the plant that's blooming, and I'm like, oh my god. And we
I
did.
love
witness.
it.
Did
You're like, oh my god, I love it.
So great.
Did the Great Desert of Noblesville, did it get moved inside? Is there a dome, or can they just be out in the winter?
Some of them have to come inside because they're not cold hardy.
Mm-hmm.
Other ones are cold hardy enough, and so they stay outside. There's one that I have that's an agave that I put a dome over because it gets too wet in the winter because our winters are so damp and moist. And so last year it almost died because I didn't have a dome over it. But this year it seems to be doing much better.
Now you have a dome.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Biodome.
It's not that big. It's it's like a cloche, basically.
It is a cloche.
It is actually a cloche.
It's a glass cloche.
Sweet.
That's
Do you guys want to hear about my gal?
Yeah.
Yay! Awesome.
Is she a plant?
Yeah, do they have
No,
plants?
nothing to do with plants.
Welcome back to Plant Nook.
I know, exactly. Bonnie and Josh are going to be really disappointed. So, Katie, for Film Club. So, for Film Club, we're discussing the Viola Davis movie, The Woman King. That is our pick for Film Club. So, the movie, The Woman King, is based on the real-life, all-female military regiment that is in the Kingdom of Dahomey. So, that is what it is based on. And if you're wondering, wait, that sounds a lot like the Dorje Milaje from Black Panther, you are 100% correct.
Whoop, whoop.
That is where they were inspired from, is the Kingdom of Dahomey.
Nice.
And so sometimes they are called the Dahomey Warriors. That's how if they're not known as the Dorje Milaje, then they're known as the Dahomey. But actually, they named themselves and called themselves the Agojie Warriors. So when they kind of refer to themselves, they call themselves the Agojie, which is also what is in The Woman King. So the Woman King movie, they call themselves the Agojie as well. So I will give you a little map of, a vocal map, not a visual map, but as well as like a time period kind of bearings. So to better kind of get the details of these amazing warrior women who I love. So the Kingdom of Dahomey is now what is Benin? Benin. There we go.
Yeah.
Benin. And Benin is in West Africa. It's near Niger and Togo, and it's on the coast. This area was called Dahomey from the 1600s to 1975. So oldie-timies as well as not so long ago. Now, the women, they also have many names, and Dahomey is the name of the kingdom that they were in, and that's why they get that nickname. And that is also what Western Europeans called them when they saw them. They started calling them the Dahomey. They also started calling them the Dahomey Amazons. Why? Because they were familiar with the Greek Amazons, and they're like, oh, well, they must be Amazons. But that is kind of, the colonizer crap that basically has been named upon them, because they were just kind of going with, well, this is somewhat familiar, so we're going to call it of the thing that's familiar. The larger area where they were in West Africa is Fawn. So Fawn is a type of people. It's an ethnic group, but it's also a language. So the Fawn language, the warrior women called themselves Agojie. So that's where it comes from. It comes from the Fawn language. And like I said, it's also in the movie, they called themselves the Agojie. But they were also called the Agojie, which means the king's wives. And they were also called the Mino, which means many mothers.
Love it.
I know, right? Exactly. And I didn't know that until I went into this. And I was like, oh my goodness. I was meant to like dive in deep with these ladies. So they were started, the idea of an all-female warrior tribe, group, army, militia. They were started by the King of Dahomey. So it is possible that it was like a gradual process from king to continue this tradition of all women warriors. It also could be a gradual process because there was a tradition of women would go and hunt elephants. And they had a group that would protect elephants. They also had another group of women that would protect the king. So it's possible that these, protecting elephants, protecting the king kind of merged into the Agojie as well of all those sort of things. But it would be Queen Hambig who established a female bodyguard while she ruled the kingdom from 1716 to 1718. Yeah, she ruled for 2 years, but it was memorable because Europeans saw her do it. So she was leading and she had a female bodyguard. And so the Europeans thought it was weird. We got to write this down.
And they all lost their mind.
They really did. They had a hard time understanding how that could even happen. So why women, right? Why women as bodyguards, as military, as army? Well, the kingdom was engaged in multiple wars and the male population was low. So women replaced the men for numbers, but also because the king said so. So what the king said went, and he's like, I would like all women as my army. And they all went, okay, we can do that. We're ready for it. No bigs. So from 1818 to 1858, this is the time of King Getzo. Dahomey was put more in focus. There was more resources that was put on it, and it was all about building this army of women. It really also fell into this structural power and a military power as well. So more women were recruited as soldiers as well. Now, sometimes they were foreign captives, right? So they were against their will becoming military. Some of them volunteered. And also some of them were sent against their will because their husbands or fathers just couldn't deal with them anymore. I mean, I would volunteer as tribute if my husband, or father couldn't deal with me anymore. Be like, yeah, I'll join the all-female army. I'm on this. I think I've got some anger I could work out if I'm rejected by, But the Agojie training started as young as 8 years old. Is when they would actually start taking on their military training. The Agojie were not allowed to have children. No children. Don't even think about it. It's not going to happen. It is not an option for you. They also were considered to be married to the king. Now, it doesn't mean the king necessarily had any, access to them because they can't have kids. But basically that they are loyal to him and he is loyal to them in this particular sect. So they would not take any aspect of married life. So they had no married life responsibilities. Please tell me what that's like. I'm sorry. I love you, honey. Sorry, my husband's here. Hi.
I bet they felt so free.
However, the training was intense. So we gotta weigh this because there's some
pros. So I
can
stay married or I can go to boot camp.
There's some pros and cons with this situation. It is not all sunshines and rainbows, unfortunately. They were taught to be indifferent to pain and indifferent to death. Like those two things they had to basically become numb to completely. So one training exercise was that they had to run into a bush of acacia thorns. Like those really thick suckers. Yeah. They had to run straight into it and out of it. And sometimes they had to retrieve something, but they had to run in and out of it and just take the scrapes and take the being stuck in it. And it was horrible. Also in the movie, by the way.
Ew.
Another thing that they had to do was behead a condemned prisoner. So it was a prisoner who was condemned to death, who has done some horrible things, according to someone, and they had to behead them to prove that they could be
Take
able
a
to
life.
take a life, deal with death, and be okay with it. They didn't have the best weapon, so we're not saying that this is you know what I'm saying? Like, this is not a one and done scenario. So, like, keep that in mind as well of your first, exactly. So, but those who rose up the ranks, you know, through the thorns and through all the beheadings and all of the training that they did, there was also archers and gunmen and lots of different aspects that are within it too. But if you rose within it, you would be rewarded with wealth and status, including setting policy in the kingdom. So it was like real power. Wasn't too bad, right? They lived also in the royal palace with the king. The king's wives and the eunuchs lived within the castle walls. No men were allowed in the palace walls, except for the king, once the sun went down. So it was, for the most part, all women, all the time. And these ladies didn't have to worry about married life, so woot! So that must have been, you know, very, very nice when there wasn't a war going on. At one point, there was 6,000 women in the army.
Jeez.
Dang.
Lots, right? Exactly. They were highly visible as well. So not only the numbers, but they like went out there to show their numbers. They wanted everybody to know that the Agojie was there and that they were powerful and that they were not scared of death and they were not scared of being hurt and they were not scared of dying themselves.
Think about how many men would be like so scared about being beat up by women.
Yeah, right?
I mean, you wouldn't even start shit because you...
Yeah. You don't want none.
Yeah, you don't want to try to save face after that.
And I think that's part of the king's
Mystique.
idea, the intimidation of it, of fight my women. You won't fight my women.
See what happens.
Exactly. So there was different regiments. So they all had, the different regiments had different weapons. They also had different skill sets, and they had different uniforms.
Nice.
I mean, you gotta have the different uniforms, right? Again, there's some really terrible line drawings done by colonizers that draw these wonderful different uniforms, but it's the idea, at least we know there's different uniforms. But the regiments, you want to hear what the regiments were?
Yes.
Huntresses,
Nice.
riflewomen, reapers. I just want to know what the reapers are doing.
I was about to ask, what do you guys want to be?
They reap people.
I think it's the reaper, like the sickle.
Oh,
that's what my guess. You know what? That's what draws to
Is that
mind.
weapon of choice?
Maybe. There's
Ooh.
also archers and gunners.
Okay.
And the gunners are different than the riflewomen.
Huh.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's because it's the Western. They're using, I think they were using French weapons.
Could gunners
the
be like
rifles.
cannons?
Yeah, it
Yes,
could be cannons
exactly.
larger than the rifles.
Or some kind of like exploding grenade or something like that. Cannonball-like. So, yeah, no, if you want to choose huntresses, riflewomen, reapers, archers, and gunners, you know.
I mean, reapers sounds good.
Does
sounds
it?
frightening.
Don't fear the reaper?
Exactly. But in this case, you do fear the reapers.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I'm partial to huntress. I kind of, for some unknown reason.
That one rang out to me too.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Seems like you could be kind of sly.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is very true. And so their weapons, and this kind of depended on their regiment as well, would be those Winchester rifles, clubs, and knives. Were there, you know, and archers and bows and stuff like that too. I mean, obviously, if there's archers, there's going to be archery. Also, all the regiments were commanded by women. So it wasn't like, here's 6,000 women and the guys are in charge. No. The women are in charge of all of it. And so they are leading the charge, coming up with the I just want to say strategery. I know it's not strategery, but if we're talking about wartime, George
Coming
W.
up with the strategic planning.
Strategery, yes, exactly. So they battled with other kingdoms and tribes. They attacked under the cover of darkness. Right? They cut off people's heads and they brought them back as trophies for the king to show them what a good job they did. I believe he then gave them a gold star. Sorry, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
A sticker for their passport.
A sticker for their passport. Yes, please don't bring me a severed head.
There's a special sticker for that.
No, there is not.
Podcast secret.
Exactly. I'm terrified of what it would look like. My God. They would also free captives from the Oyo Empire. But the Agojie would actually enslave their enemies and sell them to Europeans. They're not perfect. I'm just saying. So they would exchange in the slave trade for more weapons. That was the way to actually get like those Winchester rifles and those, Western colonized armaments, is by selling other people. And they did this until 1852, which is 18 years after the British abolished slavery. So they were doing this for a while. I will say that, America abolished slavery in 1865. So again, we're later after the British. But the Agojie warriors were warriors for the king. They were powerful. They did have a certain number of control, but they were also under a very bloody patriarchy. Like, it was still very much a male-focused society, and it was, the king's rule. So their hands were not clean of the slave trade of their fellow Africans at all. And the Agojie also fought the French in 2 major wars. So, unfortunately, they lost both of them. I know, right? They suffered lots of casualties. But weirdly, the French were, really impressed with the Agojie. So one of the quotes is, "incredible courage and audacity." And then a Marine said, "Neither the cannons nor the canister shot nor the salvo fire stops them. It's really strange to see women so well led, so well disciplined." I mean, thanks? Question mark?
Yeah.
Not sure. So the French took over the Kingdom of Dahomey in 1894. And when they took over, the first thing they did was completely dismantle the Agojie. Yeah, no female warriors for you, right? They felt that, the French felt that women shouldn't be warriors. It's not civilized society. Again, colonizers. But yes. So some women still guarded the king in secret. So that's kind of very Dorje Milaje sort of thing, right? So they still would protect. Some of them did actually go get married. Some of them became assassins.
Nice.
Right? And some of them picked fights with their neighbors just because, not being a warrior woman anymore is really hard. So apparently some of them were causing trouble. But there was also a touring group. So a touring group would perform dances and battle reenactments at places like the World Columbian Exposition in Chicago.
Love it.
Yeah, it's really hard because it really did play into racist stereotypes. But sometimes we know of them because they went to places like Chicago. And so it's like, yay! Cool.
It almost makes me think of a worse version of Animal Kingdom.
Yeah, sure.
Where you go there and they've got the fake African town. But it seems like a much worse version.
Low budget and not nice to the people that you are showing off as some kind of trophy or oddity in a very weird way. But because of at least not disbanding them, and they can't do their dances, they can't do their practice, they can't do their reenactments, probably a lot of it would have been lost to history. So at least it was staying alive in this tour group in some fashion. And so French colonization was also just very terrible in general. It was really bad for women's rights. Women were not allowed in politics, and they were barred from election. So all of that power that they had was very much stripped from them. So Leonard Watchkin, a native of Benin and economist at Princeton University, told this to the Washington Post. He said, "The French made sure that the history wasn't known. They said that we were backward. They said they needed to civilize us, but they destroyed opportunities for women that existed nowhere else in the world." So this was a real example of, but this is what happens with the power of women. No, we need to make sure that nobody besides a stereotype that is out there. But the last surviving Agojie woman is thing to be called Nawai, and she fought the French in 1892 and died in 1979.
Wow.
Over the age of 100.
Nice. Wow.
Right? Wow. But the Agojie traditions actually have survived. So they were kept hidden because there was one of those things where it's like, oh, no, we're going to keep this on the down low. And they really kind of kept it within the palace walls as well. So when actress Lupita Nyong'o, who was in Black Panther, when she visited Benin, she met a woman who was training other warriors.
Nice.
And so she learned as a child, and she was continuing the training, and she was also continuing the stories so that they were shared with her people in a authentic way, not in a stereotyped or colonial way. So you get the fun pulp culture references like Black Panther, and you get the movie The Woman King. There's also in Jules Verne, there's a chapter in Robar the Conqueror that actually mentions these women. He calls them the Dahomey Amazons in that. Do you remember that? Because there's also a Werner Herzog one.
Oh.
They're in Cobra Verde, by the way.
Ooh. All right, so now we're having to watch that movie again.
Ew.
It's been a little while since I've seen Cobra Verde. I like
Gross.
that.
Okay, but it does have a mention of a tribute of the Dahomey or the Agojie. However, yeah. Also, there's a stage play by Leyland Gray. He wrote a stage play called The Dahomey Warriors as well. There's a couple of video games where you can choose to be a Dahomey character.
Love it.
Nice.
And there is a graphic novel by Rebecca Hall and Hugo Martinez called Wake, The Hidden History of Women-Led Slave Revolts that include them as well. So they're kind of hiding in plain sight sort of thing. It's like that idea of an all-female military force is not completely foreign, but I mean, like any military force, it's quite problematic and complex. So, yes. Any questions for me on my gloriously Agojie?
No, I'm just picturing them in like Age of Empires now. A little
Yeah.
game of just
Right, exactly. Yeah.
great.
It'd be fun. Exactly. I mean, maybe even Street Fighter. They're not in Street Fighter, but you know what I'm saying. 8-bit version. Sweet. Do you want me to close it up?
Go for it.
Yay! Look at that. All right. Well, that wraps it up for us this week. Join us next week for another African Gal is Picked to share as the Gal's Guide podcast continues. Thanks for listening. Want to learn about more women of history? Gal's Guide opened a unique women's history lending library. Come visit and explore our collection. Learn more at galsguide.org. Thanks for listening.